Alright, here's where we're at. We got our holes cut. Now it's going to be the fun part, because this... wait a minute. Got it upside down. This sets in here like so. Well, I only got one hand, so I'm doing the best I can. But now what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to hot glue gun these two together, because this has these little prongs that go in these two holes here. So then I'm going to hot glue gun these together, and then I'm going to use this gauge, because it ain't got the long cord. I'm going to set it there and trace it, and I'm going to once this is glue gun together, I can cut this out and get where the gauges will set in there. And that. Now what I'm going to have to do, if I can't get this to work, I'm going to make a metal plate. But I'm going to try using this along with the factory covers. Well, you got the fuel gauge, the volt. You won't really see it. It's just going to be that black mat behind it. But then when this is sitting in like this, you know, I'll put the mat over and then install the gauge. So it's just a matter of trying to get this to cut out. Now, once I'm ready to do this, what I'm going to do is figure out where the level is, which is right about there. Since I had to cut all this out, these supports, well, I'll do it with one. And then when this is sitting here, once I get the gauges mounted, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of plastic, cut it to length, and I'm going to hot glue gun it from this surface up and trim it so this will be tight against it. Then I'll come in from the back side and I'll hot glue gun it to this. And then when this one's over here, I'm going to do the same thing. That way it's going to have the support, and I can put that one here up to here. And then that way this will be nice and supported. So that's where we're at. Just slowly going at it. But this is what we're doing. So. Alright, now once I get these cut out and the gauges mounted, then I'm going to worry about this piece. Because if you see, these gauges are going to sit up here more. So they're going to be half covered, and I could clock them, you know, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the die grinder, and I'm just going to slowly cut up here, over, and then right back down. So that little chunk there is going to have to come out to read both gauges. This one here isn't going to be an issue. This will cover it up just ever so slightly on the far left edge, but not enough to hinder reading it. So that one, I may or may not trim this down here a little bit. I'll see once I get all three gauges mounted, then I'll look and see if I want to trim this. But this here will have to get trimmed, because I just don't want to clock the gauges. I mean, I could mount it upside down like that. Oh, it's at 40, I'm good. I'd rather just trim it and go from there. But like I said, we'll worry about this piece after I get these cut and glued in there. Then we'll worry about doing this piece. Alright, got these two glued together. I ran a bead down the front. I glued it up here. So these screw holes here are for mounting the sender here. I did label the ones I took out in case I ever need one, but I doubt I'm gonna go back, because these gauges are inaccurate. They don't work half the time, so I just don't care. But this is where we're at now. This is one piece. Now this one here has nubs too, because once the speedo's set in here, then this goes in here, and them two nubs go in the two holes like this had for the speedo, and they all just keep clipping together all the way down. You start here, then the speedo, and then these. Well, I just made this one piece now, and now I'm going to trace out my gauges how I need them, and I'm going to start cutting the gauge holes out of this. Okay, now what I did, I put this away with this setting in here how I needed it. I put this in here, and then I traced with that gauge all the way up in the corner. And then you can see there's my original line, there and there. Then what I did is I drew an inner line, so because if I cut on the line, this bezel would even go through. So then I drew an inner line and an inner line, and I cut it, and that's how we're sitting. So now that will sit right there. And there's our first gauge right there. So 2 more to cut out, but that's where we're at. I gotta cut out this one. And like I said, I do have, let me dig them out just in case somebody's unsure. These plates here go over this. So, like that plate goes right there. I am gonna cut these, once I get the gauges mounted, I am gonna cut these also. So then I'll still have the fuel, but for the one that goes in between the oil and the water, it'll put, it won't say diesel fuel because that one goes here, but that one will be here. So I'll still have this as a backing. It just won't say the volt gauge or the water, but it'll still have this black mat that will go right in between them. Now, this bulb here gives you light for this gauge, all 4, okay? My fuel gauge will no longer be lighted. But I'm not sure how I'm going to do that because there's a piece of glass that went in here and it hooked to this bulb. It came up and it illuminated all 4 of these gauges. These do have the lights in them. Well, not in them, they're up in there in the kit, but I'm going to put the light. So all these 3 gauges will be lit. I'm not sure if I'm going to even worry about the fuel gauge. I'll see once I turn the headlights on. These might be bright enough that it might illuminate the fuel gauge some. Because as you see, I had to cut out the support for that clear plastic piece that provided the light off of this bulb. Well, I had to cut that away some, and I cut the support away some, which I wasn't concerned for the fuel gauge, because I should have enough light off of these gauges and the glow from here where I'm going to faintly see the fuel gauge at night. But that's going to set in here right like so, and like I said, we got the first gauge. This is the oil. It's actually going to go over here. The oil goes here, the voltage gauge goes here. So now I'm going to cut this out, and I'll cut this one out, and I'll get them set in there, because these gauges have this backing plate here that screws up on the gauge. So all I got to do is, before I permanently mount this, put that there, screw this up, and it's going to lock the gauge. I'm going to have to trim this edge piece some because that's interfering with that. So I'll have to trim this, but then these just screw right on there and locks your gauge, and it'll lock it to this plate. All right, there's how 2 of them are going to sit. Of course, they're going to be orientated the right way, but there's 2 of them. Now I just got to cut out for this 3rd gauge here. And once that's cut out, then I'll start trimming them plates that go underneath the gauge for the fuel and all that. But that's where we're at. There's 2 of them. this one here, the only two tools I'm using is this little cutoff wheel and the sander. So as you see, with that in there, I still have room, so I'm going to sand a little bit more. Just use this little sander on there and to get them exactly where you want them. So I'm going to sand a little bit more off here so I can get this closer over here and that. And but that's all I'm doing, just them two little tools. And like I said, just a cheap Harbor Freight oversized Dremel tool. But I'm going to get this third one now, and then I'll be able to start trimming them plates that go behind over this, but they'll go behind the gauge. So I think this is going to work pretty good. I don't see an issue. Like I said, the only issue I'm going to have, and I don't feel it's going to be an issue for me, is this plate ain't going back in to have the light all 4 gauges. But these are usually pretty bright anyway, so I think I'll be able to see the fuel gauge just fine. But that's where we're at. So I'm going to get this last gauge drilled out, or cut out, sanded. And then it's going to be time to start cutting them backing plates, and then I'll get them mounted to this piece and go pull the dash out of my truck and start putting this together and go from there. All right, there we go. There's all 3 cut out. I can't put all 3 gauges in here because I have the volt gauge temporarily mounted in my truck, because that's why I'm doing this. My volt gauge don't work at all. So all 3 of them are cut out. So now I just got to cut them backing plate, and that will fill in all this open area, which this is open anyway. That's what the plate's for, because that plastic piece sits right here, and that's how the light comes in. So I'll cut that backing plate to fit in there, but there we are. This does just pull out here, and it'll set right there, so you can see all 3 gauges fit. And the fuel will be right here. So that's probably going to be it for this video. Because like I said, if I make them long, then it seems like nobody watches. So, but there we are. We're one step closer. This is with a hot glue gun. So that's all there is to it. I am going to, like I said, I'm going to build little stanchions there and here to give a little bit extra support to this, since I cut all the supports away up here and on the side. The only support it has now is here and here, so I'm going to build a center support, because I don't want this flopping around when I'm driving down the road. So then that'll eliminate this wobbliness here. So alright, y'all have a good one.